Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining myself, Sophie Parrott, a journalist at HR Grapevine, today for an HR Grapevine and CrossKnowledge webinar titled How to Boost Engagement with Learner Marketing. The current coronavirus pandemic has forced many workforces into remote working arrangements almost overnight, and subsequently, this has caused a surge in remote learning offerings, as has been shown by numerous studies. It is therefore more important than ever for HR and L&D teams to be able to effectively communicate with their audience learners to ensure that they have the right level of support and guidance to help them navigate this challenging period. This webinar will provide information on the importance of learner centricity, provide insights on applying basic marketing principles to boost engagement with digital learning offerings, as well as other key discussion points. So today I am joined by Leila Minten, who is a learner marketing consultant at CrossKnowledge, who will be able to give you more information on the topic. Throughout the duration of the webinar, please use the question function to put forward any questions that you may have for Leila, and I'm sure she'll be happy and able to answer at the end of the session. There will also be the opportunity to engage in a couple of polls, which are dotted throughout the presentation, and we will give you more information about how to participate with those as the webinar continues. So without any further ado, I would like to hand over directly to Leila, who can discuss the topic further.
Thank you so much for this introduction. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm calling you all from Belgium. I'm in close to Brussels here. And excited to spend the coming 30 to 40 minutes talking about this topic which is my personal passion and of course the job I have today within CrossKnowledge. And then we'll, like Sophie said, have some time for questions at the end of the session. Okay, good. So let's start off the conversation around learner marketing. So very important for me to start with is to kind of explain to you why it's so important to have a learner marketing strategy when you are deploying a digital learning solution. It has a number of effects. The first one is that driving a real learner marketing adoption will help you to have a higher adoption of your learning solution, meaning that your audience will be able to make it more of their own. And we can consider your learner marketing strategy the consolidation of all of the communication actions that you are putting in place related to the promotion or the communication around purely your learning solution. So our ideal purpose, of course, at the end of a learner marketing strategy is to have real loyal learners. So to drive loyalty is going to be hopefully the result that we can attain when we have a strategy in place. And it will also help us to have a better understanding of what the needs are of our target audience. So targeting those needs by making a more diverse and personalized learning offer will also have a better impact. And a very important point I want to make is that learner marketing is not a standalone thing. It really goes hand in hand with learning design. For me, these two really have to be a collaborative work, because you can have a solution that from a user experience perspective and a user design, user interface perspective looks beautiful, very catchy, very sexy looking. But if the content itself isn't relevant enough or isn't valuable enough, then you still will not reach the usage that you might be going for. So for me, learning design being the whole learning science and the pedagogical aspect of your content needs to be as qualitative as your learner marketing. So the whole look and feel about it. And so finally, doing a good learner marketing strategy will result in having a higher increase of your traffic, the traffic towards your platform or your learning solution. It will boost the awareness, so the fact that your learners will know that your learning solution exists, that it's there for them and what it does to them. And also it will stimulate engagement, like we said, and loyalty. So just giving this slide, I hope it already draws the attention of why this practice is super important and why everyone should be, as much as possible, conducting a form of learner marketing strategies within your whole learning practice. And so going back to what the traditions of marketing are, I would say that we need to consider our learners just like our clients and consider our solution like a product. This means that if we are considering our learners as a client, we need to know, just like in traditional marketing, who our target audience is, who is the client that we're trying to reach. So geographically, how are they spread? What age categories do they have? But more relevantly for a learning solution, are they, for example, digital savvy? What tools do they use to already learn today? Which channels do they use to go to their learning in today's situation? And how can we best tap in on those existing channels to make sure that we reach those audiences in the best possible way? And next to that, like I said, considering your solution like a product. So typically, like any kind of product you would want to market, it's important to really create a proper branding around this product. So give it a name, give it a logo, give it its own look and feel, its own dynamic. If you have a tagline, use it and use it frequently. And all of the things that we would traditionally link to marketing a product, we need to do the same when we are marketing our learning solution. Because I'll show a couple of numbers right now, you'll see that when you do market your learning solution, you have a real effect in the different metrics that are kind of the basics of what we measure. So you see registration rates, registration to your course or your platform, but also increase in the usage rates. So the amount of usage that your learners are doing. So how much are they actually actively consuming the content on your solution or on your platform? But even the completion rate of your courses. So it's not just connecting once and not coming back, but it's also progressing up into a level of completion. And also in general, improving your satisfaction. Well, this will happen if you do have some form of marketing, if you do some branding around your learning solution, if you target your audiences more personally, just like we saw in the slide here before. Now, how to do these things, because I think you all agree with the whole list of reasons why marketing your learning makes sense. I think you all agree with that. But the question is, how do we do that? And I would like to take you through what we call the 4 golden rules for learner marketing. And I'll go through each of the rules and I'll show a couple of examples and explain a little bit more about it. So the first one is to define a strong naming and branding. That comes back to what we said before. It's making your learning solution just using it as if it were a real product and addressing it like a product. The second rule is everything related to your animation, if I can call it that way, or the whole communication plan around the promotion of your learning solution. So it's not just building up a launch campaign when you go live and when you do a kickoff, but also everything after that launch. So it's the whole long-term plan to keep that mobilization active, to keep your learners engaged. The third rule is everything related to that learner centricity and how to best know your audience, target them so that you can personalize your activities, but also personalize the channels you use to reach them and make sure that you really tap into the needs that your audiences might have. And then the fourth rule is everything related to metrics and measuring the success of your initiatives. So it's about setting up good KPIs, but also setting up realistic objectives related to those KPIs, and then having the right governance model around that to properly measure rather what you've been doing and the effort you've been putting into place, rather it's really been paying off. Good. So for the first rule, stick to a strong naming and branding for your solution. And you already see a couple of examples here below of clients with whom we've done this in the past. We've guided them through the process of doing this. And I know that this can be sometimes challenging because it's not a given fact that the typical stakeholder I interact with, which is typically a person that wears a learning or a talent hat, that is not necessarily always a person that has the marketing expertise. And this is why I really want to encourage this to be a collaborative exercise to be made with the communications department within your company or the marketing departments, because these are the kinds of expertises that we want to bring around and bring to the table to be able to really build a nice brand. And if you look at this example here of, for example, iLearn, which is one of our clients, they went for a very simple tagline, which is explore, learn, grow. And this tagline they use in every communication they use, in every banner they use. So it's constantly coming back. And you also see that in terms of kind of the look and feel they created, it's quite, it pops out into your eye. It's quite quite flashy, and it's quite modern, and it really works. So this has had a good success. And you see here that the second client here also have something similar in terms of their tagline, which is live, learn, leap. So also there they went for something that's catchy, something that's kind of funny, because you have that triple L word following up. And so there again, they use this live, learn, leap in all of their communications. And it's also the way in which they build their content structure, falls under live, learn, or leap. I'll come here to this example in the right, which is data skills. This client, data skills was the name of their platform, and then their kind of slogan is, so to say, data skills matter because it matters. And then they had a sub tagline, which was master your skills from A to Z. Master with the kind of wink to the Darth Vader character that you see here. And so when you would see this name, the data skills, and you would see the logo of the Darth Vader and the whole connection to Star Wars, you wouldn't typically think or consider that this is an actual learning brand. But we really chose to go this far in our creativity, because the target audience for this client was a very techie, I'll almost say geeky audience. And so we really needed to find something that would work for them and that would appeal to them. So we went for the Star Wars themed type of design, and it really worked. So it was something that worked a lot, and we kept using this little logo of the Darth Vader throughout the different communication cycles. So for example, when we went live, we did like the idea of a landing. So the Darth Vader was in a rocket and would kind of, take off from the ground. And so we used him consequently in multiple types of communications. And then the last example I'm sharing here is the Cook. So this is kind of a wordplay with what you might know as the MOOC, the Massive Open Online Courses. And this was a course that this client wanted to launch around creativity. So they wanted everyone in the company to really stimulate their creative mind. And this is why they decided to, instead of using MOOCs, write COOCs, so the Creative Open Online Course. And creativity was all about the wordplay with cooking your creativity and gathering all of the necessary ingredients in order to have the most possible creative mind. So they, for example, also launched with a really fun teaser video in which you saw like multiple ingredients being shaken up together, and then this cooking hat came back. And so you see a real storyline throughout the entire branding of this specific course. And so for me, this also shows that you don't necessarily have to have, a proper branding around your whole platform, because sometimes government-wise, it's difficult to do this because, you might be a very international client that has a lot of local or regional stakeholders, which makes it difficult to create this kind of umbrella brand. But then an alternative strategy could be, for example, to really brand your course and to do it at that level. Because regardless of at which level you do it, that branding is always going to be more valuable and more important. So I'm curious to hear a little bit on your side how you do branding of your learning solutions today. So we're going to launch a poll question, and I'd like to see some of your reactions.
Yeah, fantastic. As Leila gave some great examples there of different kind of brand names and everything for their learning solutions. So we just want to find out really what you guys have got going on at your organizations. So the poll question here is, do you have a strong name and brand for your learning solution? So there are 4 different options, ranging from yes, we have a name, but it's not really a brand, all the way down to no, we don't think it's necessary. So I'll give you guys about a minute or so, or 30 seconds, just to cast your votes, and then we will chat through the results. Just give it a few more seconds. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll just close the poll and then we'll launch the answers just so we can see. Okay, so wow, so 50% of you have said that you do have a name, but it's not really a brand. And then the second position is no, we don't have a real naming / branding, but you do see the value in it. Leila, what are your thoughts on the results? Is it something that surprises you, or is it what you already expected?
It's not what surprises me because, like I said, I think it's also due to the fact that it's not necessarily the expertise that people have in the team, you know, that's building the whole learning solution or the whole learning design. So this is why I think, you know, it's good for discussion to say this is not something that you have to necessarily drive or own, but you can really, I can encourage people to open up this conversation with other departments within the company to have a conversation together around this. And it's good to hear that a lot of people do see the value of it. If only because the value is that it will have a better effect because it will be more sticky and it will resonate more towards your target audience when your learning solution is really branded, because branding it is also making it fun, and that's really important.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for your participation. I'll just hand back over to you, Leila, just to continue with the presentation.
Good, thank you indeed. Let's look at the second golden rule, which is about when to market your learning and the whole plan or the chronology of building out a communication plan. And I'm using this very simple timeline, which may seem, you know, obvious. However, it's just so important to take a moment and reflect about this, because these three momentums each have a different purpose and a different reason for existing, of course, and for also being taken as a valuable moment in time when communicating. If we start with the before, this is everything related to creating awareness, right? So making sure that people know that, first of all, you have this offer available to them, but it's also about giving a value to it, explaining why what's in it for them. That's a very crucial thing, and also making sure that you can already inspire upfront and make sure that you target your audience by saying this is going to be useful for you, and we want you to come, and already sets an expected behavior of once people will have access to it. And it may seem so logical, right? Because we do it in the cinema world as well. We do it all the time when a movie is coming out. You have your teaser coming up front, which is everything related to already, you know, creating that excitement around it. You showcase the stars that are in this movie, and we don't do this enough in learning. You see here in this poster, and I think it's a great example where you have all of the stars that are shared by all of the feedback and all of the reviews from experts in the business that can kind of give that stamp of quality and confirm that this is really a validated good movie. Well, we don't do that, unfortunately, enough around learning. Although, you know, you are maybe spending hours and hours of your hard work into building qualitative contents, but we're not making the effort of really sharing, you know, who was the creator of this content, and we're not showcasing that enough, or having ambassadors explaining, you know, when you show them as a pilot up front, explaining why they loved it. Because if I can hear from a peer that they loved it, I will probably be motivated myself to, when I do have access, go and engage with the content. So that before phase is really important, because it will make sure that when you do launch, you have a higher level of reach, and you have a higher connectivity. The during is everything related to the experience once people do get access. So it's really creating a go live momentum, making sure that it can even be an event that you connect to it, whether it's an online and or offline events. But everything related to proper eventing also means that we have stronger experiences, and experiences are things that we remember more. So again, if you want to have a compelling experience and you want to have a compelling learning solution, then it's important to tell a story. So storytelling for me is really valuable, and making your during, so your go live, an actual event, is going to make sure that you have higher engagements. And so I'd like to share a couple of practices of what a strong experience may mean. And the example I'm showing here on the right is, in our case, your homepage for your learning solution, so your kind of welcome hub. But this could also be the look and feel of your course as such. So that, again, from a look and feel perspective, is really important to have a strong experience. So a couple of best practices is, again, having a dedicated visual identity, something that's recognizable, that's quite strong, that looks catchy, that can stimulate that loyalty. And again, if you want to have a strong experience, it's about personalization. In all of our digital tools, in everything that we're using, whether it's social media or other applications on our smartphones, we are getting personalized content, because either you have to select up front the topics that you're most interested in. I, for example, recently downloaded TikTok because it's the hype that everyone's downloading. And upon your first connection, you have to first select the topics that you're interested. Do you want to see videos around cooking, or do you want to see videos around dancing, you know, whatever it may be, so that the content that afterwards is being pushed to you is personalized to what your preferences are. So also in learning, we should try and replicate this as much as possible. When we are building our design, then it's also important to think multi-device. So to make sure that we have a responsive design that can perfectly and seamlessly work on the different devices that we're using, so that we don't lose that experience. And also there, keeping it simple, the KISS rule, right? Keep it simple and stupid is super, super important, because it's also just a matter of how much we can process in our brain. You should consider as a thumb rule that if you have a homepage on which categories of contents are presented, well, then 7 is the maximum number of amounts of clickable things that should be presented to you, because more than 7 is just very difficult to remember or to cap for our brain. So there again, limiting you to a number of clickable or call to action items is going to really help you to keep it simple. A couple more examples, and I'm sharing a second design that complies or applies those rules. Again, storytelling. So how can I make sure that I'm telling a story and that story is consistent throughout the line of my communications? And also when I'm building in call to actions, which are first of all important, you must have a call to action in every communication you're sending out, but also make sure that those call to actions are strong, so that it's not too freely or too you know, optional, but you want to make your call to actions more directive, so that people get the urgency or feel the urgency of wanting to actually click on something. I mean, if I'm going to tell you, you know, you might be interested in this versus you want to see this, it's a completely different tone of voice in your call to action. And the second one will probably have a higher effect than the first one. And then the final thing in your design and in the building of your experience and your look and feel is to think ahead. So especially in our case, when we're guiding our clients in building their home pages and designing their home pages, we always ask, what is your future roadmap of your content release and of your future learning strategy, so that we don't create a design that's too fixed or too static, that would not allow for any flexibility or for options to be added in the future. So it's really important to think already ahead and make sure that we have something that can organically grow once we also continue adding on contents. Good. And to continue on our timeline is now, of course, the after phase. So after we've launched, after we've made our awareness there and that people know that the solution exists, and once they've connected, it's important that we create something sticky, so that we have an ongoing engagement and that we make sure that there is enough loyalty. And it means that we need to avoid dropouts of our learners. And so doing things like, for example, organizing a seasonal training or a masterclass could be one of the ways in which you could stimulate that ongoing engagement. For example, once people have already browsed through your learning solution, they've already discovered everything that's available there, and they might have already consumed a whole lot of your content. You know, it's sometimes tricky to think, okay, how can we surprise them with newity? So doing something like a dedicated masterclass or a seasonal training can be interesting. The example here is to build really something that is only available in a limited period of time, which may seem contradictory because digital learning is typically available all the time, you know, unlimited to anyone via any device. That's what we're always saying, right? Anytime, anywhere, any device. But here we're playing a little bit with that element of marketing with this, which is the idea of scarcity. Is, for example, saying, you know, we're only going to make this available for X amount of people during this period of time, which means that you create, again, a feeling of urgency, which would traditionally not be there with your digital learning solution. And then building a whole story around a seasonal training. For example, this case is a training that we launch around the period of the winter. The topic is all about finding your inner peace, work-life balance, disconnecting sometimes, but also about making choices and the process of decision making. That's the content of this seasonal training. Which is then also rewarded with the release of a badge when you complete this course, so it gives an extra boost. There's also the idea of giving a learning journal digitally that learners can use to kind of write down or note down their reflections throughout their learning journey. And so here again, you see that idea of a storytelling and a storyline that's really consistent from A to Z throughout this seasonal training. So that could be one of the initiatives that you'd want to do in an after modus. But of course, there are a lot of other things that could work once you've launched your solution to kind of keep coming those learners, to kind of stimulate them to come back in. Good. And moving on to the third rule, which is everything related to being learner-centric and knowing who your learners are, knowing your target audience. And so what you kind of see here represented is, for example, personas, or what personas could be within your target audience. And it's an exercise that I always encourage and stimulate our clients to do, is to really try and make clusters of your learners within these 4 personas, and you can even give them a name and give them a working context, whether it's based on roles, whether it's based on seniority, whether it's based on digital savviness or learning needs. You decide how you want to kind of pull them in, but this is going to help you to, from those personas onwards, think of, okay, how can we match the content we have to each persona, and also how can we use the channels that we're using for communicating that best answers the needs of each of these personas. So putting the learner at the center of your exercise is going to be really important and going to be really valuable, because it's going to allow you to analyze what are going to be motivational factors for them to come and learn, and how to play with those factors. Work with the idea of maybe piloting to one audience and gathering that input before you roll it out to other audiences can be in a way of doing that personalization. Working with influencers is something that, again, we don't do enough. I think we often look at the kind of drop-off rate we have, or if there's a churn rate of people we might lose along the way, we focus on them, but we don't reward enough those learners that are actually the good example ones, the pioneers, the ones that are setting the scene for learning within your company. How can we identify them, and how can we make them maybe ambassadors to kind of have that promotion growing more organically within your full audience? Asking for input before acting, again, doesn't happen enough in the experience I have with our clients. We have a learning strategy and we roll it out for our learners, but not enough do we stand still and actually ask the questions towards our target audience, saying, hey, we're rolling this out. These are the ideas we're having. What do you think? What is missing? Or what do you really like? What do you need more? Really involving your learners, because at the end of the day, we're building something for them. So they should also be involved more maybe in the building process. And then, of course, once you have built it, also, I can only stimulate the usage of surveys and focus groups to afterwards ask for feedback and ask for input once you have rolled it out, so that you have things to improve in the future. And so a couple of ways to do this, even in your communication, could be, you see here on the left, an example of an email that we created, which within the email allows via questioning for a personalization. So you're maybe sending out one similar email to a whole group of learners without really personalizing or customizing. But within your email, you're creating the option of customizing by asking a question, and via a yes and no type of questionnaire, you can get to 2 different entry points. Could be a way of still having a form of personalization when, for example, your HR data doesn't allow you to really go to that granular level of personalization. But also in the design, you can personalize. Here again, I'm coming back to the example of our data skills clients. They included GIFs in their emails, which is, again, very modern, but really appealed to the target audience here, who were mainly millennials. And this is the kind of thing that works. Immediately you have the level of fun connected to this. So again, in your tone of voice, you can also make some kind of personalization. And then the final example I'm sharing here on the right is another client who uses personalization in the kind of skin. And the skin, I mean the kind of background or imagery that they use in either their homepage or their newsletters. And there again, they personalize either based on the season to give it a feeling of change and annuity, but also personalize based on the persona types. So define imagery that works best for different types of audiences. And I'd again like to pause to ask a question to you and understand how today you do or don't personalize your learning offer.
Yes, fantastic. So if we can just launch that poll. So the question is, do you have a personalized learning offer and do you identify different audiences amongst your learners? So once again, there are 4 different options to choose from, ranging from yes, a personalized offer and different target audiences, to no personalized offer, but we do identify different audiences. So once again, we'll just give you a little bit of time to click on the option which most resonates with your business, and then we'll talk through the results when everyone has cast their votes. Let's give that a few more seconds. Okay, so if we can just close the poll and then we'll share the results with you all. So very, very interesting. It seems as if 50% have said that they don't have a personalised offer, but they do, in fact, identify different audiences. And then the lower rating was, yes, a personalised offer, but no different target audiences. So Leila, again, are you surprised that lots of people don't potentially have a personalised offer, but they do identify the different audiences within the workforce?
I'm happy to hear that, because too often I still hear that, and there is not a personalized offer and there is not a personalization of the audiences. So already hearing that that clients might be identifying their audiences but not yet matching the content to those audiences, that means that you're already one step in the good direction. And it is a time-consuming exercise to customize also that content to the right audience, because if you're gonna give the reward of giving personalized content to a targeted audience, it also creates an expectation, right? So it's as if saying, in the future you can expect any new content that's going to be more personalized or customized to you. But the whole work behind that, of course, requires a lot of resourcing and a lot of time. So it's not an easy thing to do, but I can only recommend it. Because again, we've seen it before, personalization is key. And the more that a learner feels that the content is also customized to their personal learning needs and their personal learning benefits, the higher their engagement will be.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you again, everyone, for participating in the poll, and I'll just hand back over to Leila to continue.
Thank you. And this brings us to the final rule, which is everything related to measurements and checking the results of your learner marketing initiatives. And so the 5 KPIs that you see here are kind of the basic KPIs or the basic measurements that I typically recommend just to be able to kind of get some kind of feedback on your learner marketing initiative. And so the first one is what we say connection rate. Connection rate would be the percentage of people that are actually connecting compared to the people who have access, who technically have access. And so there, your connection rate, well, it can vary. You could say that 50% is little, or you could say that 50% is a lot. All of this depends on a whole set of factors around it. What is the technological context for people to or connect or not connect, because this might have a big impact on the reason why people are not reaching your connection. And it could even be so that you have a low connection rate but a very high activity rate, meaning that once people connect, the actual percentage of the ones that do connect and then also consume something, actively learn, if that rate is high, so higher than 50%, then it means that what people are finding once they do connect is relevant to them. They're liking it, they are engaged by it. Maybe they love how it looks, but maybe they also think the content is qualitative. So that activity rates is going to probably tell you more than just the connection rates. The connection rate could just be an information around, is your awareness high enough? Do people know how to reach you? And once they do know that you are there and that they know that they can reach you, are they technologically blocked to reach you or not? Could be an information. If your activity rate, on the contrary, is low, so people are able to connect, you have a high connection rate, but people don't actively consume, then it might be an indicator of maybe your navigation or the structure of your content is not clear enough for people. Or the things that need to be highlighted are not well highlighted to them, which is why they think that, I got access to this platform or this learning environment, but it's not relevant to me. So that might be a reason why they drop off. And then the third one is loyalty rate. So this is really about how often and frequent are people coming back. And you could measure this based on, for example, a recurrent visit to your learning solutions based month by month. That could be a way of measuring this. But it could also be, for example, if you have a sequence of courses, is looking at the percentage of learners that participated in course 1 and course 2 and course 3, for example, and seeing whether there is a continuity in those individual learners. So that loyalty rate is also something that's going to tell you about, are you able to really remain sticky or not? The contribution rate is, for me, a little bit connected to social learning. So are people who are actively participating on your platform, are they also contributing? Are they liking things? Are they rating things? Are they commenting? Are they sharing? So everything related to some kind of social activity could be considered contribution rates, which could give you an indicator of, is there some kind of feeling of community learning or belonging to this learning solution. And the last one is, of course, your satisfaction rate or your NPS scoring. Now, this, of course, will depend on what you do or don't have available in your learning solution. But regardless of whether it's a built-in feature, I can only recommend that you really pull these satisfaction surveys and do some kind of measurements of learner satisfaction to gather some kind of input and some kind of feedback. Are people liking what they're seeing? Are they liking the experience? Is the content valuable or not? All of these are really relevant questions that are going to help you to identify better what your learners' needs are. So that's it. Those are the 4 golden rules in a nutshell. And I'm curious to hear if there are any questions.
Yes, we've had a few questions that have come in so far. Please continue to send in your questions and we'll get through as many as we can in the allocated time. So I think perhaps if we start this one, is sort of the term time spent also a good KPI to measure adoption? Leila, what are your thoughts on that?
It's a good question because we have a lot of clients who do consider it as important, sometimes also because it's related to some kind of internal KPI or something they must reach. The only caution that I would link to that is that we were still talking about technology, and especially if we are working with SCORM connectors or or AICC connectors, so things being embedded from multiple platforms, it could be so that your time spent is not always accurate. Because sometimes time spent is still being, counted while you're just having something that's opened on your desktop, but you're not actively consuming. So I would first check that technically and see if that is, an accurate representation of people's time spent. And if you do want to consider time spent, an advice that I can give is not look at the actual time that's running, but actually look at completion of either courses or resources. And every course or resource has an estimate or average time that you would allocate to it. And so you could say that if that person completed 3 courses and the 3 courses each on average lasted an hour, you could consider that that person spent around 3 hours. That could be a way to measure time spent with a more accurate certainty of your platform's data.
Okay, perfect. And something which I found interesting, which I'm sure lots of others would have found as well, is the slide about kind of defining branding, which was shown by the different slogans that you put up. if somebody wanted to develop their own sort of 3-word phrase or slogan or something catchy like that, what would be your tips in terms of brainstorming that? What sort of things should you consider, and essentially how do you encapsulate this message with just a few mere words?
I think it would be good to do a brainstorming by involving also an actual learner, so your target audience, involve them and get out of them, what are the keywords that you connect to learning, or what does learning mean to you with the current experience. But also when you're defining your vision and your strategy with your learning team, is really find a couple of keywords. And I typically say, write down 5 words that to you are the keywords of what you want to stand for as a learning solution. And then we go into the whole, marketing motion of how can we translate this into catchable phrases or words that are catchy, that can work. Sometimes that can be translated, because sometimes they need to be translated into multiple languages, and kind of work from there. And I would also, as a final advice, say be aware of buzzwords, because sometimes they are overly used and they just are bland and empty and they don't mean anything. So if you do go for a couple of words, then try and make them as authentic as possible.
Okay, fantastic. So the next question is, would you ever include application of learning as part of a learner marketing metrics?
Application of learning?
Yes, application of learning.
I'm not sure how I should understand application of learning. Do you mean applying learning?
Well, I would assume so from the question. So the question, just to repeat, is would you ever include application of learning as part of learner marketing metrics?
I think it could be a good metric, but for me it goes on the level above. So after learner marketing, for me the metrics I showed are like the basics, because they can show you rather the initiatives of really the promotion and the putting into market of your solution, rather that was successful or not. The level above that is everything related to really learning behavior, changing mindset, etc. And for me, your learner marketing will have less of an impact, because then it will be more related on your learning culture or the design of your learning. Those things are going to have, I think, a higher impact on that level of KPIs than the learner marketing necessarily would. Not sure if I'm clear in my answer.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And I guess another question is it required that somebody has a marketing experience or marketing background in order to be able to effectively deliver learner marketing?
My answer is absolutely no. It's really not required. The best ideas that I've had with clients was with clients who themselves had absolutely no marketing background. And sometimes even it can be a positive asset, because a marketeer will sometimes be too much, thinking about those KPIs or thinking about all of the technical constraints that are connected to rolling out some crazy idea. Whereas if you don't have all of that clutter in your mind and you're just thinking creatively, because that's everyone's capacity, you don't have to have a marketing background to think creatively. But I can encourage everyone to think of the most crazy ideas and just try and roll them out, and then go to your marketing department and ask, okay, how can we make this work if that's where you're stuck? But it really doesn't require a marketing person to come up with good ideas. On the contrary.
Okay, fab. And I think the last question really, just looking for some good key takeaways within this, perhaps 3 tips maybe around what you think defines a good overall branding, I suppose, in terms of like learner experience.
A good branding?
Yes, yeah. What determines a good branding?
The first thing I think would be a visual identity, or having a real visual identity. So decide, are we going to work with pictures of people? Are we going to work with illustrations? Are we going to work with objects? Whatever, there's no good or wrong, but make a clear choice. That would be the first thing I would say, is everything about visual identity. The second thing is not to underestimate the value of your tone of voice when you're building a brand. So a brand clearly has some kind of feeling around it in the name you're giving to it, for example, but also in the shapes or the font size you're using. Don't underestimate the tone of voice that is kind of like underlying in there. And the third thing would be when you're thinking of your branding, what is the coloring that you're gonna go for? You know, colors, again, it's all linked to psychology, and these are things you can easily look up. But do you want something that's more formal? Then you're going to go more for like bluish types of colors. Do you want it to be more playful? Then you're going to go more for more orangey, yellowish kind of colors. So also the color codes that you're going to define are going to have an influence on the brand and the experience people will have when they will see your brand.
Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for sending in your questions. I'm sure everyone will agree that they've learned a lot from the webinar. So essentially, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And of course, a special thanks to Leila at CrossKnowledge for a truly interesting exploration of boosting engagement with learner marketing. I know myself, I've definitely learned quite a fair bit from today's webinar. For those of you that have been asking, we will be sending out a recording of the webinar, and if you would like any further information, please endeavour to get in touch with CrossKnowledge directly. So all that's left to say really is have a great afternoon, everyone, stay safe, and we look forward to welcoming you back to additional webinars in future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.